Okay. So, why are Ethiopia and Eritrean people having to be refugees? Why are they ending up there, right? And so I have, and obviously people know, I have a lot of issues with anti-blackness as it is being used in this moment in particular, right? I don't discount that it exists, because I am black, right? So I understand that particular experience. But what I do see happening is that the conversation around anti-blackness is always prefaced with, this is a conversation nobody's having. So who's not having this conversation? Because in every room that I'm in with organizers, this is the prominent thing they want to bring up. The first thing they want to bring up. Why aren't we talking about the Congo? Why aren't we talking about Sudan? This is anti-black, right? So who is not having these discussions? It's not, the issue for me is not that discussions aren't being had. It is the foundation of which the discussions, people want to have these discussions, right? The same thing with what's happening, we see with the workers in Lebanon that was left behind, right? This becomes a discussion about these women being Africans, obviously, but there's no discussion about class. There's no discussion about refugees. There's no discussion about, these are the same types of women that you would find in Nigeria, doing the same type of work for the same class dynamics, right? So for me, it is not that these things are not happening or they're not being discussed. It is the way that these things are being discussed that I think kind of does a lot to reduce what we've all been saying that we want to do, is find those kind of common grounds where we can organize around to push this thing further, right? And what this does is demobilize the people, because then you start getting caught up in these examples that that may, I don't doubt that these things are happening, but what in the overall broader issue of the fight against Zionism and imperialism, right? These are pocketed issues that people are looking to pluck away just so they don't have to actually deal with the contradiction itself. Because the primary contradiction is not anti-blackness. The primary contradiction is imperialism. And that you see things like anti-blackness manifest, right? But that is not in and of itself happening. It's happening because of a thing. And to Rafiki's point, if we are not combating or addressing the causes of what's happening, then I can pluck a million examples. But we're not going to struggle through that. And then I'm also, when you talked about practical, I did have like a question of like, well, what do you mean by practical in terms of what is our role here in support of what's already occurring? Because I do want to note that I understand us here to be internally colonized, right? So even when we talk about support, like material support, right? What does that look like when we too are fighting our own cause, right? We are disorganized. How do we offer material support when we have not organized ourselves in a way to do that, right? And I think in order to do that, we do have to kind of heighten our own consciousness that requires digging into ideology, that requires doing the readings and stuff, that stuff that does seem like we're not making any traction. But look how many people have joined this struggle since. And look how many people have been more engaged because they have more knowledge about what is going on and what's occurring. And how many strategies have developed out of that knowledge that was gained to then have practical material support offered, because we're organizing ourselves in order to do that. So I think when we talk about practical support, we have to be realistic about a kind of chauvinism that gives off. One, that they're not able to, because look at the AES, right? Look at what's happening there. Africa's majority youth. There's a plethora of uprisings. There's a clarity that's developing and a consciousness that's developing there that is not developing here at that same pace, right? And we have the technology, and we have, this is, we're supposed to be the more privileged, right? And it's not developing in that same pace for our own youth, even if we are in similar conditions. So the question for me then becomes, how do we organize ourselves to get into the position to materially support the AES outside of being able to, garner donations, right? Because when we're talking about arms struggle, how the hell are we supporting that?
And ain't nothing practical about setting as your objective in life the destruction of the most powerful political, economic, and social force that had ever existed in the history of humankind. That's not a practical idea. It can be approached scientifically, but that's kind of crazy if you think about it. You know, and then to say it out loud, you say that outside of this room and see how people look at you. This is not practical. This is necessary.